Revealed. The incredible secret. My late son and daughter-in-law hid in their forbidden house. Helen stared at the house, its walls cloaked in the silence of loss. She felt the weight of the past pressing against her chest, suffocating her with memories of laughter and warmth. Her son, Jake, and daughter-in-law Mia had filled these rooms with life, had turned this house into a sanctuary. Now it felt like a mausoleum, encased in grief and burdened with whispers that swept through the community like a chilling breeze. It was as if everyone knew something she didn't, a secret that made them turn away just at the sight of her shattered family home. Determined to unearth the remnants of her son's life, Ellen pushed open the door, a creak hauntingly echoing through the empty hall. Dust motes danced in the stream of sunlight, illuminating fragments of the joy that once resonated here. She stepped into the kitchen, the heart of their home, and began to sift through the ashes of happiness left behind. Yet, as she rooted through their belongings, a profound emptiness began to settle in her gut. The laughter felt so distant now. The last perfectly mundane dinner they shared was eclipsed by the agony of their absence. A trembling thought festered within her. Should she even venture on this path? Was it fitting to approach their memories like this, rummaging through the detritus of who they once were? She felt the weight of shame intermingling with nostalgia, each object cloaked in sorrow. As she flipped through a stack of dusty folders, Ellen's breath caught. A glimmer of ambition flickered through the layers of despair. The neatly penned notes revealed the heart of a project they had been developing, a medical device aimed at changing lives. The pride that surged within her was quickly stifled by indignation. How could the community have ignored such brilliance? She could almost hear their voices echoing disappointment, their laughter seemingly a relic of another life, lost to a world that didn't care. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. But the notes led her deeper into shadows. Files detailing meetings with a powerful pharmaceutical company. Helen's pulse raced as dread clawed at her. Had Jake and Mia been on the brink of something significant, only to be silenced? It was a betrayal that gnawed at her insides, turning her grief into something far angrier, fueled by the injustice that had robbed them of their future. The community's silence took on a new, sinister timbre, and Ellen felt a fierce determination brew within. As she squared her shoulders to face the slick lawyer who represented the pharmaceutical firm, she couldn't ignore the gnawing unease settling in her bones. Their words dripped with false concern as they nodded and smiled. But Ellen recognized it as a thin veneer hiding the darkness behind. This wasn't just about seeking justice for Jake and Mia anymore. It was a fight against the tide of corporate greed. In that moment, a chilling realization spread through her. If they could tarnish innovation for profit, what other dreams had they buried? With that question hanging heavy, Ellen felt the walls of her own world closing in. She was on the brink of something monumental, yet a flicker of doubt budded in her mind. What would she risk to reveal the truth? As her fingers brushed against an envelope concealed under the couch, the sudden weight of it sparked a surge of urgency. She could feel fate shifting. Her fingers trembling, she turned it over, revealing the haunting message inside. They're watching you. Don't trust anyone. As Ellen's heart raced, the envelope felt like a trap, a ticket to an unseen game where the stakes were her peaceful existence versus the truth buried among her son and daughter-in-law's dreams. She gripped the edge of the couch tightly, wrestling with the impulse to tear it open, yet fearful of the revelations within. Each heartbeat echoed in her ears, an ominous percussion calling her to action, to a choice she had no intention of evading. She shut her eyes for a moment, drawing in a deep breath, thick with memories, both cherished and tormenting. Jake's laughter, a bright spark in her life, punctured the heavy silence, pushing her toward a decision. What if unearthing their truth could restore not only their legacy, but her shattered heart? Could she reshape her grief into a force that would fight against the unseen enemy, embodying everything that tarnished that promise? The layers of uncertainty peeled away as she opened the envelope. Inside lay a document, an ominous cease and desist notice bearing the insignia of the pharmaceutical company she had heard whispers about. The implications were staggering. They had not only been working on something revolutionary, but had reached a point where their innovation threatened corporate profits. Anger flared inside her, mingling with the desperation to defend her family's name. At that moment, Ellen knew this was no longer just about seeking answers. It was a war on behalf of their dreams, and she was determined to become the general of this campaign. Her decision crystallized. She was no longer merely a grieving mother. She was a warrior. The thought electrified her, shifting her from passive observer of her loss to an active participant in reclaiming her son and daughter-in-law's legacy. Ellen envisioned not just disarming the silencing agent, but also unveiling the brilliance of Jake and Mia's work. This challenge demanded every ounce of her resolve, and as her fingers curled tighter around the documents, a newfound strength surged within her. Mapping her strategy, she recalled the people who had been close to them. They might harbor secrets, or at least stories that could illuminate the obscured path. Perhaps Mia's old research partner, or Jake's mentor, would have insights she could use as weapons in her crusade. Helen could feel the fragments of her energy coalesce around her desire, not only to bring their work to light, but to forge a path of justice. Each step into the dark corners where secrets licked at the edges of her grief became vital. With determination coursing through her veins, she rose, addressing the haunting emptiness of the house for the first time. "You will not be forgotten," she declared to the silence, an oath of vengeance and tribute. Each piece of evidence she'd gathered felt like a fragment of her heart stitching back together, crafting a stronger worldview from the remnants of heartbreak. As she turned to leave the kitchen, her resolve flickering like a flame against the heavy shadows, the message of vigilance still rattled in the back of her mind. "They're watching you." The thought seeded doubt within her mission. Who else understood the magnitude of what Jake and Mia were trying to achieve? Who had silenced them, and how far would they go to protect their interests? Ellen knew she had to tread carefully. Although fired up with purpose, the dangers lurking in the uncharted territory ahead loomed larger than ever. Would she manage to navigate this treacherous landscape of corporate secrecy while honoring her family's legacy? Or was she foolish to believe she could match wits with influential figures, entrenched in the systems of power? Her heart raced as she opened the front door, stepping back into the world with a mission ignited in her soul. With one foot planted firmly in the realm of loss, and the other thrust into a battle for justice, Ellen faced the pressing question. Will she find allies willing to stand beside her in the quest against an unseen adversary? The answers awaited her beyond the threshold, igniting the fight within. What would the winds of change whisper next? As the door creaked open, Ellen felt the chill of the evening air wrap around her. The world outside was bathed in twilight, a soft reminder of the light that had been snuffed out with Jake and Mia's passing. But now, instead of retreating into grief, she inhaled the cool air like a new beginning, a breath filled with purpose. The neighborhood scene was subdued. The familiar houses she'd passed countless times now seemed foreign and distant. With each step down the porch, her mind raced through strategic possibilities. Where to begin? The thought of approaching Mia's old research partner, or Jake's mentor, kindled butterflies of anxiety in her stomach. But there was no room for second-guessing. She would have to confront her fears, just as she intended to confront the powers that had stifled her family. As she stepped onto the sidewalk, she made a mental note to visit Dr. Ethan Wells first, Mia's former research partner. He had always been open-minded, willing to explore boundaries, unlike many of their peers. If anyone could shed light on what Jake and Mia were developing, it was Ethan. Perhaps he had witnessed the pressure mounting from the corporate giants, the fear that had silenced them. Plotting the route to his office, Ellen felt a wariness in her chest, a tapping sense of dread about what she might uncover. The shadows around her felt alive, creeping closer, as if they had ears, absorbing her intentions. But Ellen pushed that fear aside, steeling herself by recalling the laughter she had cherished, the brilliant minds that had been extinguished too soon. When she arrived at Dr. Wells's office, the late evening sun glinted off the glass facade, making the building appear both inviting and threatening. She paused at the entrance, fighting the urge to turn back, her heart racing at the thought of confronting someone who had shared so much of Mia's life. Would he shun her grief? Or would he understand her resolve? With a determined nod to herself, Ellen entered. The waiting room was filled with the scent of old books and antiseptic, a blend that brought back memories of waiting for Mia's appointments. In the sparse space, an elderly woman sat thumbing through a magazine, her presence a stark contrast to the urgency pulsing within Ellen. "Can I help you?" the receptionist asked with a polite smile, breaking Ellen's trance. "I'd like to see Dr. Wells. It's urgent," she replied, her voice steady, yet the quiver of uncertainty lingered. After a few moments that felt like an eternity, Ellen was ushered into Dr. Wells's office. As she entered, a wave of nostalgia washed over her. Walls lined with diplomas and books on innovative research felt like a portal into another time. Ethan looked up from his desk, his brow furrowing in surprise. "Ellen? I wasn't expecting to see you," he stammered, his hands pausing mid-air. "I know it's sudden," she said, her voice firmer than she felt. "But I need your help." As she recounted her recent discoveries, she observed the tightness in Ethan's jaw and the deepening lines on his forehead. The weight of their shared loss hung in the air. "Ellen, you've stumbled onto something very dangerous," he murmured gravely. "I knew they were onto something brilliant, but the stakes—" His voice faltered, revealing her worst fears. Fearsome visions of corporate power games flashed before her. Ellen had to grasp onto the remnants of her courage. "What can we do? They can't silence them forever." The realization dawned on her. Dr. Wells wasn't just a witness to their journey. He was crucial in uncovering the truth. I may have something," he finally admitted, the words steeped in hesitation. "But it's risky. If they know we're looking into it, it could jeopardize everything." Ellen's heart thudded in her chest, a mix of excitement and trepidation. "I don't care. We have to try." He looked deeply into her eyes, gauging her resolve, and Ellen knew she had crossed a threshold. The confrontation was no longer just about seeking knowledge. It was a fight against a powerful adversary. "What exactly are we dealing with?" she pressed, feeling the adrenaline surge that came with challenging the unknown. As Ethan began to reveal the secrets behind Mia and Jake's research, a powerful new determination surged within Ellen, illuminating the dark path ahead. But as the details unraveled, a chilling thought took root. If they were willing to silence Jake and Mia, what lengths would they go to stop her? Ellen was about to find out. Would she summon the courage necessary to confront the threat head-on, or would the revelations lead her further into danger? The need for allies resonated louder than ever as the impending battle loomed. Ellen felt a surge of determination as she settled into her seat across from Ethan. The reality of their situation pressed down on her with a tangible weight. Mia and Jake had been swept away by forces far larger than their lives, and now This same potency threatened to crush her own efforts for justice. The room felt smaller, constricted by the gravity of their task. But Ellen's resolve only hardened. "Tell me everything," she urged him, her voice steady, despite the turmoil within. She needed information. Knowledge was the only weapon they had against the corporate machine that had quashed her family's brilliance. Ethan hesitated, his fingers grazing the edge of his desk. Mia and Jake were working on a project related to sustainable energy, a breakthrough that could have disrupted the entire industry. But the corporations don't want competition. Too much at stake for them. She leaned forward. "What kind of breakthrough?" "The kind that would allow for energy generation without carbon emissions. Something they were calling zero-feet technology," he explained, eyes narrowing as if recalling the complexities of their work. They were about to publish their findings, but the pushback from the industry... Well, it was unearthed by some very nasty people. Mia and Jake's passion for their breakthrough flooded back to Ellen, the heated discussions they used to have about a cleaner, more sustainable world. That passion had come with risks, she realized too late, now that the consequences lingered like a ghost haunting her thoughts. "So you think their deaths were tied to this research? It's a strong possibility," Ethan replied, his voice barely above a whisper, as if even speaking the words made them more real. "The stakes of this research escalated quickly. The corporations monitor anyone who gets close." A chill ran down her spine. "And you think we're being monitored? Right now?" "It's highly likely. They have their eyes on anyone who might attempt to revive that research. If they see us, if they suspect we're investigating, it could endanger everything, including your life." Ellen didn't process the warning. It fell to the side as determination surged through her veins. "We have to continue. We can't let them bury this." Ethan's brow furrowed deeper, but beneath his uncertainty, she noticed something shift, an ember of hope igniting in the depths of his eyes. "I have access to some of Mia and Jake's files. If we can find a way to safely release their research, then we expose them. We bring it all to light," Ellen concluded firmly. "And we honor Mia and Jake by making their work known." A tangible silence settled between them, charged with the weight of unspoken fear and camaraderie. Ellen felt something stir within, a long-lost flame ignited by a purpose greater than herself, and she realized that her personal quest for justice was intertwining with social responsibility. "Okay," Ethan said, his voice steadied as he met her gaze. "Then we'll need to be tactical. I can set up a secure meeting with a few allies who have shared their concern. But keep this under wraps for now. Every move counts," Ellen said, the plan forming in her mind. The stakes had elevated, but so had her resolve. She would not stand idly by while the truth remained trapped beneath layers of corporate greed. As they strategized, Ellen felt boundaries dissolve, an internal transformation. She was no longer the grieving mother bound by fear. She was a steward of the legacy her children had left behind. "Let's get started. If we're going to do this, we need to act fast," she insisted, a newfound urgency pulsating through her. "First, those files. Get me everything you have." Hours slipped by as files were translated from words to power, and Ellen felt the momentum building within her. Each page revealed would be another spark of defiance against the darkness threatening to snuff out hope. But doubt began to creep into her thoughts. Was she prepared for the dangers that loomed in the shadows? As Ellen processed the chilling implications of her actions, an underlying question rattled in her mind. How far was she willing to go to protect the truth? Crucial decisions loomed on the horizon. Would she stand firm against encroaching danger, or would she falter as the pressure mounted? The answers lay ahead, tantalizingly out of reach like the flickering flame of a distant star. Ellen sat stiffly, the glow from her laptop illuminating the shadows of her determination. The room felt suffocating yet charged with urgency, as every digital file she opened whispered glimpses of Mia and Jake's vision. It was more than a research. It was the culmination of dreams. As each page turned, she was drawn deeper into their world. A world that might hold the key to justice, but also danger. Ethan was quiet, occasionally glancing around as if expecting eyes to materialize from the walls. His demeanor had shifted from apprehensive to fervent. Ellen sensed the shift within herself as well, igniting a sense of ownership over a cause that was now intimately tied to her own identity. Unfettered by her past grief, she triumphed over her previous hesitations. "Ethan," she said, cutting through the silence. "We can't just plan. We need to prepare for what happens next." She understood the unpredictability of their situation. Exploring the repercussions of their actions was paramount. "We'll meet with the Allies," he replied, rubbing the back of his neck, a telltale sign of anxiety. "But the more we dig, the more dangerous it gets. The risks, they're immense." "I can handle risk," she affirmed, but her pulse quickened at the thought of confrontation. She had lived through her worst fears, the loss of her children. But now the fear morphed into a steely resolve, fueled by purpose. With a sharp intake of breath, she flipped through the files, noting the technical language woven with sketches and diagrams. Each was a narrative in itself, necessitating her understanding of concepts she had once shelved in disinterest. Suddenly, she was not merely a grieving mother. She was a novice determined to guide the legacy of hope through unfamiliar territory. "What if—" Ellen began hesitantly, pausing to consider how far she was willing to challenge the norms of safety. "What if we approached an independent journalist, someone with a platform, someone who can amplify our message?" Ethan's gaze sharpened, a flicker of intrigue igniting in his eyes. "That could work, but how do we ensure that we aren't exposed in the process? We can create a coded message in our communication, a way to ensure that only those meant to receive the information do." Helen thought of trepidation and the shadows lurking in every corner, yet clarity ensued as her strategic thinking took shape. "Creating a safe channel is critical," he agreed, his demeanor shifting to one of collaboration rather than hesitation. "We could also use VPNs to protect our IP addresses. We draft the articles in a way that doesn't fully expose our intentions until the last moment." The thought of proactively guarding their steps infused her heart with a mix of fear and excitement. Ellen was not only gaining knowledge, but also reclaiming her agency. The stakes felt monumental, transforming her grief into a weapon against the very powers that had tried to quell her family's vision. Her stomach twisted as she considered the backlash they could face. The corporations would not remain passive. They would retaliate if they felt threatened. "We need to be relentless yet smart about this," she cautioned, a tremor of exhilaration underlining her words. "We must stay 2 steps ahead." As they fine-tuned their plan, Ellen's self-doubt began to dissipate, replaced by an eagerness to harness the legacy Mia and Jake had envisioned. A realization struck her. This mission encapsulated who she was becoming. A fighter, a guardian, a vessel for change. Yet beneath her resolve simmered an unsettling thought. What if she miscalculated? What if her determination drew the very danger she sought to evade? Would she embrace this path, knowing that the consequences could disrupt her life yet again? With each question hung in the air, an unsettling truth lingered. What if she was about to unleash forces that could not be contained? Feeling the weight of her choices, Ellen prepared for the next steps that would lead them to confront the shadows, head-on. The time had come to face not just a corporation, but the slow unspooling of secrets that connected everything. The lives lost, the reputations at stake, and the fragile hopes that hung in the balance. Could she reconcile the impact of their choices before it was too late? The answers loomed in the shadows, ready to entwine with hers as she took the next decisive step into the unknown. Ellen's fingers hovered over the keys, uncertainty swirling within her as the gravity of their decision settled in. Each click of the keyboard echoed through the silence, as if underscoring the weight of what lay before them. The air was thick with a cocktail of ambition and trepidation, her every instinct urging her to act, while a shadow of doubt lingered. Ethan stood, pacing alongside the table cluttered with notes and documents that mapped out their strategy. The intensity of his focus was a mirror of her own, yet his anxious energy seemed to pulse with an edge of urgency. "We need to finalize our contacts," he said, his voice low and determined. "This isn't just about the message anymore. It's about survival. We'll reach out to the journalist tonight," she declared, her voice gaining strength that surprised even her. The resolve she had nurtured was blooming into a fierce commitment. She could envision Mia and Jake's essence behind every letter she typed, a spirit she was no longer willing to let fade, yet her mind was a whirlpool of implications. Would this be enough to shield them from retribution? Would their actions not only expose corporate malfeasance, but also fatally endanger them? Helen could feel the boundaries of her previous life stretching, straining against the possibilities of this new path. Her internal conflict intensified as she stared at a photograph pinned to the wall. A snapshot of Jake and Mia, smiles radiant as they stood among their friends. At that moment, their dreams felt separate from the darkness that loomed now, an innocent past overshadowed by the bitter reality. Did she risk invoking the ire of those in power who would stop at nothing to bury their wrongdoings? The stakes were rising rapidly, and Ellen was painfully aware that she was running out of time. "We need contingency plans," she insisted, her analytical mind firing. "If something goes wrong, we must have a way to retract our movements. Multiple ways. We cannot afford negligence. Let's brainstorm." Ethan agreed, even as he leaned heavily on the table, the tension evident in his posture. Ellen felt invigorated by the collaborative energy, as though their minds were merging into a singular force against the anonymity of those who had taken so much. As ideas flowed, Ellen began to sketch out alternatives. Secure locations where they could meet in case they received threats, secret accounts for communication channels, and even establishing emergency protocols in the event of electronic infiltration. Each plan was an attempt not just to act, but also to anticipate the dangers that could ambush them. Indeed, she was not merely reacting to grief, but actively reshaping her reality with each careful decision. And yet, a growing realization scratched at her consciousness. Behind each idea lurked the reality that no matter how meticulously they planned, they risked entering a game that could spiral out of their control. "Ellen." Ethan's voice cut through her spiraling thoughts. "What if we can't cover our tracks? What if they find out who we are?" His honesty pierced through the momentum they had built, bringing her face to face with the claustrophobic truth of uncertainty. "Then we make noise," Ellen replied, a fierce glimmer igniting within her. "We turn the fear into a transformative force. If they come for us, we make sure they regret it. We expose everything they've hidden." As she spoke, the concept of a front line materialized in her mind. Not just a defensive measure, but an offensive one. Every ounce of her was emboldened, turning dread into audacity. There was a flicker of hope that they might illuminate the darkness with truths hidden far too long. Yet, even as resolve solidified, a wrenching comprehension settled deep within her gut. What if this fight demanded more than they could afford to lose? Would the legacy of Mia and Jake be reconciled with the consequences of their exposure? The walls of their refuge suddenly felt like confinement as she recognized the chasm between intention and consequence. Ellen inhaled sharply, grounding herself. "We're going to do this, Ethan, but we must tread carefully." Her heart thrummed with anticipation as she leaned forward in her chair, hunger for action swelling within. The risk was tangible, palpable in the air thick with unspoken fears and fierce hopes. "Let's set our meeting with the journalist for tomorrow," she instructed, her tone stealing into a directive. Just as she rose to finalize their plans, the sudden ping of a notification broke through the haze of determination. Her pulse quickened as she pressed the screen, revealing an unexpected email. It bore the name of a journalist, renowned for exposing corruption, and, beneath it, the chilling words, "I'm in. Let's meet." The thrill of engagement was quickly overshadowed by a foreboding uncertainty. Had they truly opened a door they could not close? Would she unleash forces that would irrevocably alter the fabric of her life? Ellen braced herself, feeling the tightening grip of the world shifting beneath her. A new chapter awaited. But would it be one of triumph or tragedy? Ellen's heart raced as she read the email, each word igniting both excitement and fear within her. This was the moment they had dreamed about since the tragedy, a chance to confront the darkness head-on. Yet the looming uncertainty about the potential repercussions chilled her resolve. What if this was too much too soon? "Ethan." She turned to him with urgency threading her voice. "We have to prepare for the possibility that this doesn't go as planned. We need to anticipate every angle." His eyes narrowed, reflecting her concern. "Agreed. If they catch wind of us before we take the first step, we could be putting ourselves at risk. We have to remain vigilant." As they sat together, Ellen felt a surge of power coursing through her, a feeling that she was gradually transforming from a passive observer of her circumstances into the architect of her own fate. The tension wasn't just fear. It was a visceral reminder that she was bold enough to tread into the unknown. "We will create a secure way to communicate," she suggested, her analytical side kicking into high gear. "No phones, no emails that can be traced back. We'll use encrypted messaging apps, and meet only in person. Closer to the public eye but discreet." Ethan nodded, scribbling down her suggestions. There was something invigorating about this plan, a synthesis of her fears shaping themselves into concrete steps. Each point they discussed became a layer of armor against the challenges they might soon face. Yet Ellen's mind kept returning to Jake and Mia, their innocent laughter stark against the sinister backdrop of corporate deceit. Were they honoring their memory by standing firm? Or were they merely inviting chaos into their lives? Balancing that dynamic loomed above her thoughts like a cloud, hovering dangerously close. As they worked through their plans, Ellen felt a twinge of doubt creeping in. The meticulous nature of her thoughts turned into reflections on her own capabilities. Could she really carry this weight? What if she faltered? "You're stronger than you give yourself credit for," Ethan said, breaking her train of thought. "When we were out of options, you found a way. You're not just honoring their memory, you're a force to be reckoned with." His words resonated with her, igniting the spark she needed. Every sleepless night spent wrestling with grief had forged her resolve. She wouldn't just be a voice echoing in the shadows. She would become a beacon illuminating hidden truths. Pushing aside her lingering uncertainties, Ellen took a deep breath. "Let's finalize our plan for tomorrow," she said, newfound determination sharpening her tone. "We won't let fear dictate our actions." Later that night, as she prepared for bed, Ellen sensed an exhilarating shift within herself. She looked at the photograph of Mia and Jake yet again, now seeing their faces not as relics of sorrow but as catalysts for change. It was no longer about preserving memories. It was about creating a legacy of courage. But amidst this burgeoning determination, a repository of deeply seated doubts still flickered just beneath the surface. She wasn't just stepping into the unknown. She was about to open the floodgates of consequences. What if the journalist betrayed the trust? What if they ended up compromising their safety instead of achieving justice? When sleep finally took her, Ellen's dreams were haunted not by despair, but by the adrenaline of impending confrontation. A single question loomed large in her mind. Had she become a warrior for Mia and Jake? Or had she wandered into a battlefield where victory demanded an unbearable sacrifice? Morning broke with the world waiting. Ellen dressed with purpose, each movement deliberate as she prepared for their meeting. As she grabbed her bag, her phone buzzed, the screen lighting up with an anonymous message that read, "I know what you're planning. You need to stop." A chill rushed through her veins, tightening her chest. Ellen stared at the message, feeling the stark reminder of the danger she was now entangled in. The stakes were higher than she could have ever anticipated. With her heart pounding and uncertainty clawing at her resolve, she made her way toward the door. There was no turning back now, only the throbbing reality that the moment had come to face whatever awaited them in pursuit of justice. Ellen stepped outside, the cool air hitting her as she steeled herself, thoughts racing. The time had come to confront not just the truth, but herself. What did this battle require of her? And at what cost? Would she find strength, or would she unravel? Ellen's breath hitched as she stepped into the crisp morning air, the anonymity of the message weighing heavily on her. Everything felt amplified. The sound of passing cars, the rustle of leaves, the faint hum of city life all teased her senses, reminding her of the risk she was about to take. She knew this was a pivotal moment, launched into a confrontation not just with external forces, but a deeper battle within herself. With every step towards her meeting with Ethan, her resolve honed like the edge of a blade. Yet doubt crept in, twisting at the edges of her determination. What if she was overestimating her strength? What if their efforts only unleashed more chaos? Arriving at the cafe they had agreed on, she found Ethan already seated at a table in the corner. The familiar sight of him ignited a current of reassurance, yet the shadows of uncertainty still lingered in her heart. Just as she approached, she caught a glimpse of her reflection in the glass door. She looked composed, determined, but the slight tremor in her grip as she set her bag down betrayed her inner turmoil. "Hey," Ethan greeted, concern flitting across his features as he registered her tension. "You okay?" Ellen nodded, forcing a smile. "Yeah, just a lot on my mind." They settled into their plan, discussing points for their upcoming meeting with the journalist. With each tactical detail, she felt a flicker of control. Yet when they spoke of the potential fallout, a new anxiety found root. "Ethan, what if this backfires? If they don't believe us or twist our words? That's the risk we're both taking," he replied, his voice steady. "But we can't shy away from the truth. We owe it to them. Your kids. When this is over, even if it doesn't go according to plan, we will know we tried." His unwavering confidence fortified her. But as they fine-tuned their strategy, Ellen couldn't help but reflect on her own motivations. Was she truly ready to bear the weight of their stories, to face the backlash that could ensue? With every decision, she confronted the ghosts of her late children, catching glimpses of their spirit urging her forward. "Look," Ethan said, breaking the cycle of her spiraling thoughts. "Let's not just focus on what might go wrong. What can we gain? If we succeed, we could unveil a truth that might prevent future tragedies." Ellen drew a breath, contemplating his words. The prospect of preventing further loss ignited something deep within her. Perhaps they could not only get justice for Jake and Mia, but also help others. As they finalized their plans, a sense of clarity emerged. It was no longer about just her struggle, but a new purpose, to change other lives moving forward. Suddenly she felt buoyed by the weight of her mission. This wasn't just a revenge narrative. It was about protecting the innocent from the monsters hidden beneath professional facades. When they finished, Ellen stepped outside again. The day seemed different, a little more alive. With each stride, she felt her purpose crystallizing. Everything seemed aligned, until her phone buzzed again, pulling her heart into her throat. "Do you think this is a game? You need to back off. You're in over your head." The sharp edge of panic clawed at her again, but beneath it, a current of defiance surged. She turned to Ethan, whose eyes were a mix of alarm and unwavering determination. Ellen felt a fire ignite within her, a realization of what was at stake. This was not merely about personal vengeance, but could evolve into a crusade for justice, for transparency, for the memory of her children. "Let them come," she declared, her voice steady. "I refuse to be silenced. This is bigger than fear. This is about truth." Ethan met her gaze, the shared understanding solidifying their bond as comrades in the fight. Suddenly, Ellen wondered if this stirring inside her was a decisive shift, not just in her path forward, but in who she was becoming. What lay ahead wouldn't just be a confrontation with faceless adversaries, but an exploration of her own strength. A journey toward self-discovery that went beyond everything they previously planned. As she scanned the street, a hardened determination anchored her. Tomorrow would demand more than she had ever given. And yet, with each challenge, Ellen felt more like the warrior she was destined to be. But dark clouds still hovered in the distance, whispering secrets she hadn't anticipated. What were the lengths people would go to protect their secrets? And how fierce would the battle become in pursuit of the undeniable truth? The following morning arrived with a heavy mist draping over the city, each droplet a promise of potential revelation. Ellen awoke before dawn, her mind racing, rehearsing every angle of the meeting ahead. As she moved through her routine, showering, preparing a modest breakfast, her body moved on instinct while her thoughts lingered on uncertainties. Were her plans robust enough to withstand scrutiny? The hour approached, and Ellen found herself caught in a web of discontent. She wanted to feel ready, but each fleeting moment reminded her of the stakes she couldn't afford to ignore. Clenching her fists, she allowed herself a moment of reflection. The insistence of her children's absence pulsated through her. They were her anchors, her motivation. It wasn't simply about confronting the dark corners of her past. It was about molding a future that they would be proud of. As she arrived at their selected meeting place, Ellen noted every detail. The subtle scent of brewed coffee, the juxtaposition of chatter filling the air, the sunlight piercing through fog, only to fall short of creating warmth. A part of her felt exposed, but she anchored herself, recalling Ethan's words. "It's about the truth." Ethan was already waiting, the mantle of professionalism firmly resting on his shoulders. "Ready?" he asked, eyes glinting with a mix of resolve and urgency. "Ready as I'll ever be," she replied, though her heart kicked against the confines of her chest. They exchanged small talk, but Ellen sensed the air thrumming with unspoken pressures. This was uncharted territory. They weren't just presenting facts. They were taking personal experiences and transforming them into narratives that couldn't be unseen. As the meeting began, Ellen fought to appear composed. The journalist, a sharp-eyed woman named Rachel, was all business. She leaned forward, pen poised, eager to peel away layers of Ellen's anguish. "Let's discuss your children. What happened?" It was in the recounting that Ellen found her voice. Each word she spoke was a testament not just to her children's lives, but also to her own awakening strength. She shared their stories, the laughter, the dreams, and how they were overshadowed by injustice. With every anecdote, she connected more deeply to the purpose of her mission. It was more than a quest for accountability. It was a lifeline to others who had been silenced. As Rachel pushed further, probing into raw emotions, a realization hit Ellen like a tidal wave. This wasn't something to fear. It was a chance to reclaim her narrative. She was not merely a grieving mother. She was a force for change, capable of gathering fragmented truths and forging them into a weapon against indifference. When Ethan chimed in with important contextual details about the broader implications of systemic issues, Ellen felt an exhilarating mix of anxiety and clarity. She was no longer an outsider to her own story. She was the architect, shaping it with conviction. She could sense the shift in the room as Rachel took notes, the gravity of their words clearly dawning upon her. However, Just as the atmosphere began to lighten with the shared understanding that they were rewriting a narrative together, Ellen's phone buzzed violently on the table. A message blared on the screen. "You are making a grave mistake. Watch your back." The tension snapped back like an elastic band, and Ellen felt the chill of fear radiate through her. But a spark erupted inside her, fueled by her commitment to the truth. She met Ethan's gaze, his unwavering support bolstering her. This was not merely a danger to consider, but an affirmation that they were drawing the attention of those who wanted to keep secrets buried. Undaunted, Ellen stood taller, realizing this was part of the journey, imbued with potential triumphs and the reality of adversaries willing to do anything to maintain the status quo. "I won't stop," Ellen declared, her voice gaining strength, resonating in the silent space around them. "If they want a fight, we'll give them one." The path was perilous, and uncertainty loomed. But Ellen felt the fierce resolve within her strengthening. This confrontation was about discovery, not only of hidden truths, but of her relentless spirit that refused to be extinguished. What lay ahead would demand all her courage. But as she exchanged sharpened looks with Ethan, Ellen knew they were on the precipice of something monumental. The battle lines had been drawn, and the impending storm promised to test not just their mission, but the very depths of who Ellen was becoming. What other secrets lay waiting to be unearthed, and at what cost would they fight to claim the truth? Ellen stood in front of the towering building, her hands shaking as she faced the looming facade of the corporate office that had been the heart of her family's devastation. This was it. The culmination of weeks spent fueled by a relentless quest for truth and justice. The email from the journalist had confirmed their fears, and now Ellen was prepared to confront the people who had silenced her children's dreams. She was no longer just a grieving mother, but a resolute advocate committed to revealing the darkness behind their untimely deaths. As she approached the entrance, a sense of solid confidence surged through her. Gone was the uncertainty that had once paralyzed her. She was equipped with irrefutable evidence. Documents confirming Jake and Mia's innovations, accounts of their struggles against the vast machinery of corporate greed, and support from allies who had rallied to their cause. This was her moment of transformation, and she was ready to seize it. Inside the building, Ellen met Ethan in the designated waiting area, where the anticipation and tension buzzed thickly between them. "You ready?" he asked, and his voice was steadier than her nerves. "For them," she affirmed, her voice a quiet but powerful promise. "We're doing this." When they were ushered into the conference room, Ellen took a firm stance, adrenaline coursing through her veins. The representatives from the pharmaceutical company, polished and cold, seemed taken aback by her presence. The disbelief that she, a mere citizen, had dared to challenge them reflected on their faces. But she understood. Their confidence had thrived within shadows, where silence was preferred over accountability. Ellen began her presentation with clarity, laying out the timeline of her discoveries, the innovation behind Jake and Mia's sustainable energy project, and the malicious strategies employed to suppress their legacy. Her voice rose and fell with emphasis that drew attention. She pointed to the documents they had compiled, the testimonies gathered, standing firm and gradually feeling their weight lift as she spoke. As she detailed how Jake and Mia's research could have changed the landscape of energy generation, she saw the representatives shift uneasily, their arrogance thinning. With each fact presented, they were stripped of their defenses, and Ellen felt a surge of righteousness coursing through her. "I know you're aware of the implications of the work my children were doing," she said, the lowering tension in the room sharpening her focus. "They were on the brink of revolutionizing the industry, yet you chose to silence them out of self-interest. This will no longer be tolerated. You will be held accountable." Her voice rang with a newfound authority, resonating against the corporate bricks. It was a moment of reclamation, not just for Jake and Mia, but for herself and the unwavering spirit of a mother who had stepped beyond grief to become a force for justice. As the representatives sputtered with their attempts to regain control of the conversation, Ellen didn't flinch. She reminded herself that her transformation had come at a price. The once timid woman who had buried herself in memories was now manifested as a force to reckon with. Finally, the opposition shifted tactics. Fleeting threats masked as warnings. Ellen felt a chill run down her spine, but she stood rooted in her newfound strength. "Go ahead. Threaten me," she said, her voice unwavering. "I face greater loss than you could ever imagine. I am not here merely to fight for my children's names. I am here to ensure that no one else suffers beneath your corporate machinations. You will be held accountable for both your sins and your cowardice." With every ounce of resolve forged by pain, Ellen walked away from that conference room, knowing she had accomplished a significant milestone. She was no longer just pursuing vengeance. She was transforming their narrative into a beacon of hope. The meeting opened avenues of change beyond her expectations. Days turned into weeks as Ellen's story gained momentum, drawing the public's attention. Support surged in from corners she never expected. Activists, scientists, and those who had also been affected by corporate greed rallied behind her. Ellen was not just fighting for Jake and Mia's legacy. She was igniting a movement that turned grief into a collective roar for transparency and justice. One evening, standing on stage at a press conference, she looked into the sea of faces that had gathered not just for an inspiring story, but as allies committed to making a difference. Ellen had uncovered the truth, and she was widely recognized. Once an ordinary woman, now a pivotal figure in the fight for accountability within a broken system. As she spoke about her mission, about how vulnerability and loss could give rise to resilience and empowerment, Ellen felt a profound transformation complete within her. She was not only mourning her children, she was redefining their legacy. That night, as she returned home, she gazed at the photographs of Jake and Mia, the joy in their faces illuminating the dimly lit room. For the first time in what felt like an eternity, she felt a sense of peace wash over her. "I did it," she whispered, her heart swelling with pride. Because this wasn't just about what she lost. It was about their legacy, her transformation, and finding the strength to rise despite the depths of despair. Her phone buzzed with hopeful notifications, messages of support, empathy, appreciation, and inquiries about future plans. The journey wasn't over, but she was not the same woman who had stepped into that house of grief. Ellen had emerged as a trailblazer, a champion of truths, and a guardian of legacies. In rediscovering her voice, she finally triumphed over her demons, paving the way for something brighter. The echoes of the past would always remain, a part of her. Yet strengthened by those whispers, she had proven to herself that she could conquer the ghosts that threatened to consume her, shedding light into the darkest corners of the corporate shroud that had sought to keep the truth buried. Now is your moment to support this powerful journey of transformation and resilience. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and help us bring more stories of overcoming adversity to light. Comment your reactions and theories about this incredible resolution. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this uplifting conclusion. Don't wait even one more second to share. True fans of personal overcoming stories recognize the importance of standing together and uplifting each other. Your support matters.